Hi, I'm Phileas Steyn and I'm the Safari Expert, and welcome to the second episode of Out and About. And today I'm going to talk to expert wildlife photographer Greg du Toit. Greg, thanks so much for joining me, man.
Thanks, Mr. V. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's been about a year since I last saw you in Singwechi and Kruger, and who would have known that we were going to be stuck in our homes?
Yeah, you're quite right. Yeah, I wish we were meeting there again, but yeah, we are, and this is what it is. But at least if we can't be in the bush and be photographing, we can be talking about it. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, Greg, and before I ask you some sort of slightly more serious or interesting questions, have you got any idea where you were exactly 12 years ago and what you were photographing?
Funny enough, I thought about that. I thought about that just before this interview, but I'm suspecting I was at some random game reserve in the northwest province of South Africa with you, photographing donkeys through a fence.
That's 100% right. I actually got a Facebook memory of it the other day, and that's why I thought about it. And so for those of you that don't know, Greg and I met about 12 years ago photographing a big event from Sun City, and he's 100% right. Some of the first mammals that we photographed together were donkeys through a fence. And you know what? I think what made that even more frustrating was the fact that I had just gotten back from 4 years of leopard research in Mashatu, and you had just returned from East Africa, where you were doing some of the most exciting wildlife photography of your life. So yeah, it was interesting conditions that we met under. But, a lot has happened since. But before we talk about that, tell us a little bit about that time you spent in Kenya. What was it like early 2000s when you were looking to photograph wild lions?
Yes, so basically my wife and I moved up to Kenya to run a community project. It's a lodge that's community owned. And for me, having grown up in South Africa, where we have awesome wildlife, but it's all sort of fenced off. I'm inside parks and reserves, and when I got up to Kenya, especially to that corner of Maasai land where we lived, there were no fences, and the Maasai were still herding cattle, and you still had wildlife coexisting alongside them. And for me, I just felt like a kid in a candy store, because I'd found this place in Africa where man and beast still coexisted. And and I was so excited about that, and being a photographer, and of course, being on community land, there was incredible freedom. So I could basically do, whatever I liked in terms of getting out the vehicle and doing what I needed to do to get the shot.
You weren't stuck in a national park with sort of park rules and gate times and stuff like that.
Exactly. And I could go off-road. I could build a hide wherever I liked. So for me, it was just, one of those great times in my career where I could just sink my teeth into my work and just have the necessary freedom that, that I needed.
And am I right in saying that you were looking to photograph a very specific wild pride of lions that were shy of humans?
Yeah, that's right, Phileas. So the one night I was, falling asleep in our tent, which was perched on the wall of the Rift Valley, and I heard lions roaring in the valley below. And then the next morning, I woke up and I heard goat bells from the local herders. And something just sparked in me where I just realized that, this is absolutely epic. I'm living in a corner of Africa where you still get lions roaring and herders, just coexisting. And what I wanted to do, as a photographer, photography is my language. So what I wanted to do was to capture a photograph of one of these lions. And, I thought it would take sort of a week or so, but it ended up taking a little bit longer because these lions are, they're very different to lions in parks and reserves. They're strictly nocturnal. They're incredibly shy. They've learned to avoid humans at all costs, But I
how much longer did it take, Greg?
Well, if you have to know, it took 16 months. It took a year of I'm sitting at one water hole. I built a hide. It was just a hole in the ground, really, with a small roof. Sat there for a year, photographed literally everything else except lions. And then eventually, out of sheer desperation, I landed up sitting inside the water hole. sort of emerged up to my neck in water. And it took 3 months of sitting like that before I eventually got photographs of these free-ranging lions.
Yeah, that's next level commitment and patience. And that photograph, that classic photograph that ended up also being the cover of your book, or African Wildlife Exposed. It's an iconic shot that obviously has, you know, traveled the world a few times around. And it must make you immensely proud to know that those 16 months, and especially the 3 months in the water, paid off. I mean, that was the shot that you wanted all along.
Yeah, it really was. And what makes it even more special was it was on film. So I have the slide, and sometimes I'll take the slide out and hold it up to the window and have a look, and just remember that time where, you know, I had the you know, the privilege, is how I see it, of sitting inside that waterhole for all those months and just witnessing all the life that exists in Africa coming down to drink, and then ultimately getting my shot. And it was a really special time in my career.
And as far as I know, Greg, that was probably the original eye-level wildlife photos at a waterhole. I mean, if you think about it now, we've got all these amazing photographic hides at Mashatu and Zimanga and in Law River Lodge. And in fact, they're popping up all over the place. But you, sitting in the muddy water there, you were getting that perspective that a lot of people now have the luxury of just going to a hide and, you're booking a session at an underground hide.
Absolutely, yeah. I guess I dug, a hole, and I just sat in it because I wanted that low angle perspective. And yeah, I know a lot of these hides these days even have sort of air conditioners inside and one-way glass that you sit and you sort of photograph through. But when I sat there, boy, it was just, it was quite often full of baboon feces, because baboons love going into my hide for some reason. And there were tsetse flies, and it was as hot as hell. It wasn't quite as pleasant as the hides are these days, but it certainly got the same result, because all you're really looking for is that low angle. I guess I'm sort of a pioneer. I never really viewed it as such in those days. But yeah, I must say, I think the photographic hides these days are absolutely awesome. Although I do sometimes miss sitting in a waterhole.
Yeah, well, I think we've got you to thank, because you probably inspired a lot of the people, or certainly Shem, when he built the underground hides in Mashatu, you would have known your shots. Yeah. So, from all the rest of us as wildlife photographers, we thank you for your sort of guts and determination. And speaking of underground hides, or maybe just to go back a little bit, when we sort of first met in the mid-2000s, I remember you telling me that your goal was to be a professional wildlife photographer and nothing else. I was going into travel writing, and maybe some other people were going into photographic safari guiding, but you wanted to be a wildlife photographer specifically. And in 2013, you basically reached what I suppose at that stage was the pinnacle, when you won the Wildlife Photographer of the Year with your Essence of Elephant shot. How did that change your life? And I mentioned this because it was photographed at one of these underground hides, but how did it change your career as a wildlife photographer?
Yes, Villiers, that was a significant event in my career, and there sure is a lot of luck involved, in getting a shot that is named the Wildlife Photographer of the Year, because that competition every year gets about 48,000 entries, and the judges have the difficult task of picking one photograph. And in 2013, they picked, one of my shots, and like you said, it was taken at a waterhole in Botswana, at Mashatu. So that was really nice for me. And but what it did was it just took me from being, a small brand, stuck on the tip of Africa. It just took me to the world, because that competition publishes a book every year, and they form an exhibition that travels the globe and goes to it goes to 6 different continents, and it's seen by millions of people. Yeah. And what was really nice for me is just the year before I won, a famous National Geographic photographer won it, and I think the year after, another famous National Geographic photographer won it. So I was in good company, and and basically it just came at a time when I was really ready to just run with this dream of being a professional wildlife photographer. So quite bizarrely, just a week before winning, I launched my coffee table book, in London. So that sold out almost immediately. And since then, there's really been no looking back. So yeah, so that was a pinnacle for me.
Well, I think the wonderful thing is that you are now one of those, famous photographers. I obviously deal with loads of amateur photographers here in South Africa on safaris, and almost like people talk about the quality of a dish in a restaurant as a master chef. This is a master chef quality photo. People will say, "Oh wow, that's like a Greg du Toit photo." So your name obviously is gets used a lot because you inspire so many people. And I think what people love so much about your shots is that they're super, super creative, including your shot that won the Wildlife Photographer of the Year. So my question to you is, how many of these amazing shots of yours are conceptualized shots? In other words, how often do you think to yourself, well, I want to take something very specific, like you did with your lion shot in Kenya, and you go out of your way to actually create that photograph?
Yeah, that's an absolutely excellent question. I would say it's about 50-50. So half of my shots are reactive. So I'm just reacting to what's in front of me. But the other half are very much conceptualized. So, for example, at the moment, it's quite funny because I spent the last few days literally just editing and searching for warthogs in motion. So motion blur warthog shots. So, for years now, I've sort of loved warthogs, and I love the way they run with their tails up. And I've been trying to get a motion blur shot of a warthog. So I finally got a whole gallery now of these shots. But for me, what that entailed was every time I came across a warthog, I would then set my settings specifically with a slow shutter speed. I would look for opportunities to pan. So it's a little bit of both, in that you kind of you sort of conceptualize what you want, and it's really a message that I want, that I want to convey in a photograph. I want to tell a particular story about an animal like a warthog and how it runs with its tail up, etc. So I have that in the back of my mind, and at any one stage, I'll have about at least 10 of these kind of shots that I'm looking for in the back of my mind. But because we photograph wild animals, you can't just say, well, today I'm going to go out and I'm going to photograph a warthog running motion blur. You can't do that because we have no control over our subjects, and 99.9% of the time, a warthog will run away from you and not parallel to you. Yep. So while I'm looking for a warthog shot, I might see a leopard. And then I need to have a conceptualized leopard shot that I want. So I'm always juggling all these ideas in my head and waiting for the right opportunity to present itself. And someone once told me that success happens when preparation meets luck. And I think that very much sums up the work of a photographer. Yes, we are prepared, not just settings wise, but conceptually, knowing what we want. But it takes a lot of luck to just be in that right position and then to be able to capitalize on it.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that, when you and I are out there taking photographs, a lot of the times we're still out with clients, and, clients always comes first. So you do what your clients want to do. And maybe you've got a day or two before or after that you can do a little bit of your own thing, but there's often a lot of restrictions. And it's only very few people like the Hannes Lochners, who sometimes have a year or two on location with a lot of freedom to really go out and push the limits even further. So to be able to create the sort of photographs that you do is, well, I always think to myself, I don't know how you see your environment, because you must be either using the other side of your brain or super, super prepared. But I must say, it certainly is something that stands out a lot. And I think a lot of amateur wildlife photographers can learn a lot from that. And I know you also have a book called Photo Tips, Getting It Right in Camera. What if you had to give an amateur wildlife photographer who perhaps at this stage just take your typical portraits of whatever they see, what kind of tips, one or two tips that you can give them to maybe just push their wildlife photography to the next level?
Yes, sure. I mean, the one bit of advice that I always give, because I think, when people ask for photographic advice, what they really are wanting is you to give them a recipe in terms of settings. So that's why, in the book I published, I do address things like aperture and shutter speed. But for me, if you really want to improve your photography, you need to put that aside for a while and just say to yourself, look, I am going to be photographing. Forget about the settings and just ask yourself what is the message that you want to put behind your work. That's the first question to ask. And the second is, what are you passionate about? What is it that really drives you? What is it in life that you find beautiful, that you find incredible, so beautiful and so incredible that you actually want to share it? And then my advice is that you must go out and you must go and photograph those things. And you must photograph them in a way that conveys the message and the story that you want to tell to the world. So for me, photographers really are poets, and we have a story to tell, but each person is unique. And just like we all have our own unique personalities, our photographs should also be unique. And then the third bit of advice that I would give is, don't be scared to then just be brave and step out and shoot the way you want to shoot the things you want to shoot in the way you want to shoot them. Because what I find with photographers so much these days is you're almost scared to go and shoot, in a different way, because you're scared that technically it might be wrong. But for me, a really great photograph, I think a good photograph adheres to certain technical limitations, but a really great photograph breaks those boundaries. So don't be scared. Just go out there and shoot what you love, and shoot it the way you love to do it. Yeah.
It's really not worrying so much about what other people think, and really just letting your creative juices flow. And I think that sort of those tips that you just gave, that's what's going to help people to develop their own specific style, something that's then suddenly going to stand out from the crowd.
That's right. I think if you consistently do this, if you consistently shoot what you're passionate about, and you then do develop a style, and that's really what starts to open doors for you, because then you have a body of work, and you have sort of a photographic signature, if you like.
Well, so when I chatted to Chad Cocking a little while ago, and I asked him, how does he decide what photographs that he shares with people? He actually mentioned yourself and Ross Cooper, and how he learned from guys like you to only really share your very, very best work. So what I wanted to ask from you, I know, you really focus on that 1 or 2 photos, maybe even a month, giving you a small selection of amazing photos that can go a long way each year. How do you deal with the challenges of something like Instagram, where people these days expect you to post a photo a day? So how do you decide which photographs you post, and how do you deal with sort of modern day society and that sort of constant bombardment of photos that people expect?
Yeah, I'm sure you saw me roll my eyes there a couple of times, but this has been a big challenge for me. Back in film days, I used to pride myself in getting 6 photographs a year that I would be happy to sort of put my name on, and maybe another 6 that I'd be happy to publish as sort of in a magazine. So roughly 12 photographs in an entire year. And back in those days, I was living in the bush full time, Then slowly the digital sort of photography came in, and I made the switch late, only in 2007. And that's also when social media started coming in. And that social media part of it has just grown exponentially. And my photography has always been quality over quantity. Yeah. Always, that's been my sort of mainstay sort of motto. And then, exactly like you say, Instagram came along, and I find it a really bizarre platform, because it's become the platform for photography, yet it's viewed on a small little iPhone, which I find kind of ironic. And you're right in that it's just about putting out, thousands of photographs, and if you look at these guys that have, millions of followers, you'll probably notice that they've put out, a lot of content.
Yeah.
So suddenly I've had to really up my game, Villiers, and it wasn't easy to sort of be brought to that point. But I had to realize, okay, Greg, you've literally got to up your game. So what I'm attempting to do, and I don't know if it's possible, but I'm attempting to give quality and quantity.
Yeah.
So I am doing Instagram. I'm doing like a shot a day, and I'm trying to make sure that it's a quality shot every day.
Yeah.
And time will tell if I can achieve that. But I've certainly risen to the challenge, because what's the alternative?
Absolutely. It's the age that we live in, and if we want to stay relevant, you've got to change with the times. Otherwise, we can't all still be photographing with film. We've got to switch to digital, and now we've got to Instagram. So who knows what will be next? But I obviously, yesterday and a little bit earlier today, I did go through your Instagram account, and it's still, it's a visual celebration. It's just this wonderful a page to scroll through. And I was wondering, there are obviously certain shots like your lions drinking and your essence of elephant shots, but have you got one or two other shots that really stand out for you, that maybe haven't won a competition or haven't been published, but that really just is special to you because of the way it looks, or maybe because of that moment that you captured, takes you back to a specific wonderful moment back in time?
Yes, well, I've got a motion blur shot of a warthog. But,
is that your current favorite?
Yeah. So, there's some photographer was once asked what his favorite photograph is, and he said, the one that I've just taken. And that is true. So I've just been editing this week, and I'm going to put a shot on Facebook today of a rhino that's just stepping out of a river, the Sand River down at Mala Mala. And I just love that shot, because the rhino is just such an impressive animal, and I think it really just shows him off. But to answer your question on a more serious note, there is one photograph that for me really just stands out. And Claire and I were living in southern Tanzania in a very, very remote park called Ruaha, and we were in a remote part of it. So we were about 4 hours drive from the closest town, and the rains arrived, and we got completely stuck in camp. So there was nowhere to go. You couldn't drive. And in front of our house, there was this open, bare patch of veld. It was basically just dirt. And once the rains arrived, that patch of dirt transformed into a field of yellow flowers. It was absolutely incredible. Wow. So I grabbed my macro lens, and I spent all my sort of afternoons photographing these flowers. And the one afternoon I went out as per normal, and I was crouched down about to photograph a flower, and I noticed one of the petals kind of moved or seemed to move. And then I noticed there was a little spider there that was perfectly sort of camouflaged. It was a crab flower spider. Yeah. And a bee then landed on the flower. And I got excited and closed my sort of aperture down from f5.6 to f9. And next thing, the spider grabbed the bee. And I thought, gee, this is epic. So I closed my aperture down, even more. And I was about to take the shot, and a little male spider came running out of nowhere and clambered up the back of the female.
No way.
So I now had the female crab spider with the bee in its mouth and the tiny male spider on her back. I was about to take the shot, and two flies arrive and land, one on each wing of the bee. So now I've got 4 subjects in one frame, and all 4 of them could fit inside a matchbox. That's how small the scene was. And then sort of just after taking that photograph, just reflecting on that and reflecting on the fact that these flowers just appeared out of nowhere, and then this yellow spider appears seemingly out of nowhere. And then the bee and the flies, those flies incidentally are called jackal flies, and they specialize in feeding on the juices spilt by the crab flower spider when it feeds. And these spiders apparently balloon in, so they're on silks of thread. They drift in the stratosphere, and sort of land. So when you just think about all that, that photograph for me just stands out, because it just sums up just these sort of, immense diversity and beauty that exists in nature, and then in my own backyard being Africa. So that's a shot that sort of stands out.
I certainly haven't seen that photograph before, so that's one that I might have to ask you to send me so that I can put it up here for people to see. I'm sure everybody will love to see it. Well, if I think of some of the shots that I've seen of yours, obviously being someone that absolutely loves leopards, that shot behind your head there, that I think it won Getaway Gallery one year, the side lit leopard at night, is definitely one of my favorites of a subject that I know very well and I love so much, and was certainly one of the big inspirations for me as a wildlife photographer and a big cat photographer, and something that I've tried to emulate over the years. And I'm still to get something that even remotely keeps up with that shot. But there's been lots of shots over the years that have inspired people like myself to up our game as well. So like I said, it's an absolute pleasure to go through your Instagram. And so for those of you that are not following Greg yet, please do go and check the Instagram link, and I'll put that up on the screen now, and I'll definitely also link to Greg's website. It's just gregdutoit.com, if I'm right, and I'll put the link in the description. And on your website, people can learn about your photographic safaris, about your fine art prints, and everything basically that you're busy with, right?
That's right, exactly. Yeah, so I've got a new website. So I'm trying to keep it up to date, and now during lockdown, there's absolutely no excuse. Sort of everything you need to know about me is up there. Yeah.
Greg, so one last question. If I say to you, you can go on a sabbatical after lockdown, and you've got a month or two and all the resources in the world just to go and take photographs, and you can take Claire with, where would you go? What's your favorite place in the whole wide world if you could just go and immerse yourself on location to take wildlife photos?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, because it would be a toss-up of going to a new place, new and exciting place, or of going to, like an older, more familiar place, where I can just sort of enjoy. I think at this stage in my career, especially now being in lockdown, I'm dreaming of sort of new places maybe, and I think I'd love to go to sort of West Africa, but go into like Gabon side there and go and maybe photograph a mandrill baboon. So I love my primates. So I've just been working on a series of prints of gelada baboons and chimpanzees. So you'll see those on my Instagram shortly. But I'd love to go get a really beautiful shot of a mandrill baboon. And I love bird life too. So I'd love to just be in a forest and see some crazy birds. Wow. Maybe go to that beach where the hippos swim in the sea, go and see if I can get some shots of that. So that's a part of Africa that I've never been to. And I would absolutely love to do that. Yeah.
And is that kind of your goal at the moment? Just kind of to end it all off, is that your goal at the moment as a wildlife photographer? Now that you have the title of Wildlife Photographer of the Year, at least in 2013, and you've seen so many amazing places, is that the goal of Greg du Toit at the moment, is to have new experiences? Or are you still trying to win another competition, or to get a specific species? What drives you at the moment as a wildlife photographer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, the way I view it is, with great privilege comes great responsibility. So that's more what drives me. I just feel that guys like yourself and myself that, I'm out there being on safari, getting to experience this incredible continent called Africa. I think that we also have a real responsibility, and a responsibility to the wild subjects that we photograph, to just be ambassadors for them, to be a voice for the voiceless, so to speak. And for me, I just feel this incredible responsibility to really showcase Africa, and to showcase the diversity across the continent, and to showcase just our beautiful subjects. And that's actually really what drives me, rather than this sort of, personal desire to travel and see new places. I mean, that is there, and sometimes I need to be really mature and say, no, I'm going to stick to Africa, I'm going to stick to what I know, and I'm going to continue to be an ambassador for the wildlife of this continent. But that's definitely what drives me. And during lockdown now, I'm feeling this responsibility, because it's been a lot of fun for the last 5 years to cruise all over the place, filling gigabyte after gigabyte, But now it's time to actually make sure that we do those moments and those animals and those photographs justice, and we get them out into the world. And this is the time to do it. So it's quite a privileged time as well.
Well, Greg, I can ensure you that I should say, that there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people enjoying your work, in magazines and on social media. So you're certainly reaching a massive portion of the population, and a lot of local South African photographers as well. And I'm sure through this video, you're going to inspire a few other people as well. So really, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me. And I just wish you all the best for the rest of the year. Let's hope we can get out there as soon as possible again and get back to those beautiful places we love so much. And just best of luck for all the plans that you've got for the rest of the year and for the years to come.
Yeah, thank you, Villiers. And if I can just share one more memory with you before I go. I remember a few years ago, we did a workshop together just down the road from where you live there at Kapama. And I've just got to tell the story because it's one of the funniest safari stories I have. But we had this guy from Glasgow on the workshop. And I'm not sure if you recall, but we couldn't understand him at all. I mean, he was supposedly talking English, but we could not understand him. And the one day we were out on drive. It was a late sort of evening drive. And the lions were busy hunting some giraffe. And he shouted from the back of the car, Greg, I need help with my settings. My shutter speed's too slow. And the lions were about to break. So I shouted back, up your ISO, up your ISO. And anyway, and the lions broke and they missed the kill. And we went back to camp. And when we parked the safari truck, he asked to have a word with me. And he called me aside and he said to me, you know, Greg, you are here, you know, as a photographic leader to help me with my photography. And tonight, you know, I was really stuck and I asked for your help. And you told me to stick it up my asshole. And I said to him, no, I didn't. And he said to me, you did twice. and it was just lost in translation. Being a South African, I had said, up your ISO. But being Glaswegian, he had heard something totally differently. And he must have thought I was the rudest photographic leader on planet Earth. Anyway, I explained myself to him and he felt incredibly bad. And he gave me a hat that says Scotland on it that I still got. But anyway, I remember you and I laughing about that.
That's certainly one thing that I remember from the few workshops that you and I did together. There was always a laugh a minute, whether it was with the client itself or afterwards in the bedroom reminiscing about the things that happened, whether it was revving the engine to get a lion to roar or photographing donkeys through a fence or like you say with this story. Happy days. Well, let's hope in the future we get the chance to do that again. And if not, we'll bump into each other in Kruger or in Botswana or somewhere wild and we'll catch up again.
Great. Thanks, Villiers. Awesome.
It's a big pleasure. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to go and check out Greg's website, gregdutoit.com. And also remember to subscribe to my channel and click the little bell if you want to be notified every time I post a new video. Enjoy.